AMC and Regal have both announced plans to reopen their theaters, but Hollywood has still suffered some major financial losses from the pandemic. The expected tentpole films for the major studios all been pushed back, with Mulan expected to be the first release later this summer.
So these films are not only critical to the studio's bottom line, but to one of their most important relationships. That's the Chinese government. So the Federalist cultural reporter Emily Jashinsky recently wrote about Hollywood and Chinese cozy relationship and why 2020 could permanently change it. So Emily joins us now via Skype to kind of discuss her piece. Good to see you, Em. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about this observation. I mean, something I've highlighted here now for a long time about how there's all this Chinese money that goes into these Hollywood studios, which creates this feedback loop because the Hollywood studios want to, please their funders, and they want to be able to enter Chinese markets, so they sometimes self-censor. Why will 2020 make it even worse?
Yeah, I mean, I reported this story out in January, late December and early January. So it was right before things really got crazy in our relationship with China and with Hollywood's relationship with China. I mean, theater chains have been shut for months now, not just here in this country, but overseas. And that's creating like some incredible financial constraints for them. So it makes that Chinese market even more important to their bottom line. And why we should be concerned that the Chinese market is so important to their bottom line is because it means that they censor scripts. In the story that I reported out, I talked to a Hollywood executive. His name is Chris Fenton, who mentioned that actually some of these scripts are censored before they're even written. Scriptwriters in Hollywood know now not to make China the enemy of any movie and to include certain things in their films or not. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody was censored just last year. Some of the gay part of the storyline were taken out so that it could be shown in Chinese theaters. So that's where you see this relationship with China becoming problematic. And also, let's remember, Hollywood doesn't want to do business in the state of Georgia after they publish, after they pass an anti-abortion law. Well, okay, the Chinese government is repressing Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps.
Right.
So there's all
stealing
kinds
their kidneys, but that's fine.
Right. Yeah. No. Who cares about that?
Right. Well, and I think that's part of it, too, is it's easy to underplay just how much this changes not only the content of the films, but which films are even greenlit to start with because of how important and how large the Chinese market is. So just talk a little bit about that piece of it.
Yeah, so there's a quota as to how many American films can be showed at the Chinese box office in a given year. But what that means is Hollywood has incentive to pour a lot of money into movies that they know will be shown in China and will do well in China. This is in certain cases we see, American films targeted to certain demographics in this country that they know will come out to the box office and make artistic decisions because of that. But at the same time, I mean, the film industry, American film, has such a proud history of political expression. And this is one of the most important political topics right now is our relationship with China. And in the world is China's relationship with its own people. It's totally off limits to Hollywood right now, unless it's venerating the Chinese government. Totally off limits.
I think that's a really important point. And people should know, like, Brad Pitt is permanently banned from China because of 7 Years of Tibet, which was made in like the 1990s.
Wow.
Right? Like, it's things like that where they'll just blacklist you. Richard Gere, same thing. It's like all of these people are blacklisted for life because of movies that they made in the 90s. And Emily, talk a little bit about just what impact film has on our culture. Because I think one of the things that makes me really sad about this is that the movies that get greenlit are these, stuff blowing up, the jokes have to make sense on a very baseline level because they have to appeal to a non-American audience. And it creates kind of like a mass consumerist culture. And it kind of removes kind of the things that made them American in the first place, which is that films in which the whole country could rally around. And now it's made for world consumption, which just kind of dilutes that. What impact do you think that has on all of us? Because I think film is really important.
Yeah, that's another really good point. It's like you mentioned, the jokes. They have to be able to land in Chinese movie theaters, which makes it a totally different experience. For the people who are making these movies, of course, they have to now think about not just what Americans are going to laugh at. And this isn't for every movie, but it's for a lot of movies, and especially those big budget films where a lot of money is poured into, like Mulan, is a very good example. Disney is in a really tricky situation because they put a lot of money into Mulan. They tried to gear it towards Chinese audiences in a way that would make them a ton of money in the Chinese box office. But even then, there's been controversy about whether they did that correctly. So probably the most prominent controversy with this right now is with Top Gun. Is it a huge deal to the artistic integrity of the film that they took the Taiwanese flag off of Maverick's bomber jacket? No, you probably wouldn't notice it if it wasn't pointed out by conservative media. But at the same time, it's a matter of principle. This is one of the biggest issues when we talk about our relationship with China, Hollywood's relationship with China. Our Pentagon spent a lot of, collaborated with the makers of Top Gun. And then they took the Taiwanese flag off the bomber jacket. The Pentagon uses Hollywood movies as training exercises and, PR in some cases. And that collaboration, I think, is extremely problematic. So is it a big deal that the Taiwanese flag isn't on Maverick's bomber jacket? No, but there's other things that we're not even noticing because we don't know what's getting left on the cutting room floor, or even not even, this is the scariest thing, is what people aren't even putting into their scripts. The ideas that they aren't even coming up with, because they know it will never get greenlit by a major studio.
Yeah.
It's really
but what is honestly the answer here? Because, we're focused on China. I think that's important because that's a significant global issue that affects our politics here and geopolitics all around the world. But what you're really describing is just capitalism. Playing to the mass market, the lowest common denominator. I thought Trolls 2, Trolls 1 I actually kind of liked. Trolls 2 was a terrible movie. And it does amazing because it hits this point of it's sort of accessible and bubblegummy for everyone. So what is the answer to that?
Yeah, so my perspective is that the answer is more capitalism, and I would encourage American consumers to start making their demands known and saying, I'm not going to go to Top Gun 2 if you take the Taiwanese flag off the bomber jacket.
I knew this. I knew her libertarian streak was coming. I have another idea. Ban it. Ban it.
Well, Ted Cruz is trying to. He's a conservative. Ted Cruz is trying to prevent the Pentagon from working on films where there's censorship on behalf of the Chinese government. The Chinese censors have to look at scripts and everything before the movies are shown in the Chinese box office. So Ted Cruz does have a bill, which I support. I think that's an important bill. But I would also just encourage American consumers to not patronize movies that are going to do this BS.
Yeah, well, good.
Don't patronize bad movies like Trolls 2 also. Emily, thank you.
All right, Emily, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
More Rising for you after this.